So now to take a slightly different approach to this jewel, a different facet is to recognize a truthful element, which is that generally speaking, whether it's the Dharma or anything else, we like to do things that are helpful for us, that lead us away from the things that we ordinarily do, where we harm ourselves by virtue of our speech, by virtue of our thinking, by virtue of our bodies. So much of the Bodhisattva vow is driven most effectively by recognizing what we do to ourselves that cause us suffering. So this afternoon after lunch we'll have some practice with what we call the 7-branch prayer. When we talk about 7-branch prayer and when we talk about engaging in the practices of bodhicitta, we also inevitably talk about the accumulation of merit. And for many of us, the idea of the accumulation of some kind of merit is bothersome. Perhaps it feels foreign, which it is, though the accumulation certainly is not foreign, but the thought of it and the way we talk about it can be a little foreign. And so I think it's helpful first to set the stage about this because this is a very powerful meditation practice and antidote to many causes of suffering. Traditionally, when you make the 7 branches, you also get up and do prostrations. We're going to do that this afternoon, but right now, just the meaning. So we'll skip the prostrations this time. Instead, we'll join our hands together and have the attitude of doing the prostrations. It's important to recognize that if you have confidence in your heart, then even if you're not literally doing prostrations, you will have the ability to benefit. On the other hand, if you're doing many full prostrations but don't have confidence and a heart of compassion and loving kindness, then merely doing the prostrations will not be sufficient to accumulate merit. So I want to just ask the question that we can ponder: what is the accumulation of merit? First of all, while a lot of attention is paid to it, in some senses, it's no different whatsoever than all the other things that we do. if I think about someone who I know and I wish them well, perhaps they're ill or they have some kind of trouble, and I wish them well, we all know this, that when you do that, it has an effect on you. Just making the wish has an effect. So in one rather large sense, this is what the accumulation of merit is. We engage in certain mental activities and physical activities too, where we often just hold the wish that something positive happens. But what we say is that due to the truth of interconnectedness of all phenomena, just making the wish itself bears some kind of fruit. And if you make the wish over and over and over again, then the fruit becomes bigger, and the result of the practice also becomes more powerful. So just to go through the 7 branches now, before we take a lunch break. And I think if you think about it while we're going through it, you'll see why it's called a means of accumulation of merit, which is really just another way of saying, by virtue of the things that we do, the causes and conditions that we put in place, little by little, those things ultimately come to bear their own fruit. And generally speaking, we're only talking about positive things here. That is to say that if I think positive things about others, in time, that affects my own mind. And we're not talking a lot of time, we're talking like virtually every prayer you make affects your own mind. And over a period of time, the effect grows and grows and grows. And so it becomes more obvious to yourself and more obvious to others, which then bears another level of fruit in terms of your relationship with others and theirs with you and so on. So in the first one, the accumulation of merit, it's said that the 7-branch prayer is one of the best ways to accumulate merit. You could recite the 7-branch prayers here or just go over the following meaning and or recite it, which is what we're going to do now. And this afternoon we'll use the prayer that's in the Chenrezig text. The first branch prayer, the text says we prostrate. It says prostate. It couldn't possibly be a typo. So, okay, we prostrate to pay homage to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the Master, which would be the Lama. We prostrate to pay homage to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the Master, offering prostrations with an infinite number of one's bodies. So here we are at this again. When we do a prostration, or whether we just recite a prayer, it's common practice to imagine that we emanate many bodies, can even be uncountable bodies, like bodies just filling space, all in the form of our body as we recognize it. And all of them are making these wishes, paying homage, and so on. And this we call an antidote to pride. So pride is one of the great evils in Buddhism, as you may know, as pride gets us in all sorts of trouble. And oftentimes, before we study it and practice these things, we actually don't realize that we're the culprits. We have a sense that it's being visited upon us by others. We can never find those others, but nonetheless, we're sure they're out there. So the first one is to offer prostrations with an infinite number of one's body. And we think to ourselves, and it's important to recognize this, that this is an antidote to pride. Pride must not be confused with confidence. Confidence is a sense of like, I am confident that this building will stand up through the lunch break. Pride would not have anything to do with that. But if I thought to myself, because I'm doing such a great job here, everybody is going to go out and get their friends and come back, and we'll have a lot of people this afternoon. That's pride. And because I said it already, probably no one will be here after lunch. Anyway, the second branch runs like this. We present them, all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the Master, with offerings of all pleasant things in the universe, real or created in our imagination. Now, this is also a common practice in the Vajrayana, to imagine gifts and presents and things, and to offer those things as if they're real. What's interesting here is that to offer something that we have imagined, rather than something which is substantial, like money or some other thing, is often considered to be more valuable from a spiritual perspective than the actual thing that you might have made. And the reason for that should be obvious now, and if not, it will be later. And that is that the benefit here is that we offer this without any attachment whatsoever. I mean, we made it up. So if I wanted to give more, I make up some more. The lack of attachment, along with the lack of the pride, is considered a supreme gift. Far more helpful than many other things, which is not to say that there's something wrong about giving money or food or other things, but those things often are kind of tainted with a sense of pride and a sense of ownership, and I don't know if I should give more of this or less of this. All of these normal considerations are just not there when we imagine it. So imagining it is actually a very valuable exercise. And this is an antidote to avarice. So somebody asked me the other day, what does avarice mean? And just to make sure, I looked it up. It really means a kind of unbridled wanting of material things, as I understood it anyway. So, of course, this is meant to be an antidote to exactly that. The third branch. In the third branch, we implicitly, in our own minds, we give rise to regret for all the negative acts that we have done with our bodies, our speech, and our minds since time without beginning. So just recalling the things that we have done, it's funny how these things go, because again, we sort of make ourselves with these kinds of prayers and all. And I had a friend when I was in high school, and I lied to him at one point because he said, we agreed that we were going to go fishing together. And I had come to the place where I didn't like to fish anymore, but it was kind of a manly thing, you know? And I couldn't quite say that I wasn't enjoying killing the fish. And so what I did was I lied about not being able to go. And then I got caught out. And that was bad. Though we remained friends, it was like it had a really terrible feeling to it. And, of course, in the process, I ended up having to confess that I didn't like to kill fish, too. So the whole thing came tumbling down. And it's so funny because every time I do this branch in the prayers, I always remember him. So in a certain way, I'm happy about that, because I think if it hadn't gone the way it went, I wouldn't think of him every time. But because it had that kind of crummy ending, I always think of him in a positive way. And so in the end, I'm not happy about it, which is also what many of the prayers, if you do them enough, they kind of come back. You have the confession, but then it sort of heals itself in your own mind. Something good comes from it. So we regret all negative acts done with body, speech, and mind since time without beginning again. And we confess. So confession here, in the case I just mentioned, would be obvious. Confession is the antidote to aversion. That's what we say. So good to ponder that. Like, how is that an antidote to aversion? Especially confess what brought harm to oneself and to others. So that confession normally is done to the Lama or to the Master, though it can be done to an image of the Buddha, a visualized image of the Buddha, a visualized image of a Bodhisattva, or to some other spiritual qualified person in a way is considered better. Okay, the fourth one. We rejoice at all positive acts and beneficial activity accomplished by the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and ordinary beings. So here we are up to the place where we are rejoicing in the naturally arising positive acts and beneficial activity of awakened beings, like great bodhisattvas and Buddhas. Rejoicing in those things, of course, inspires us to rise to the level that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have risen to. And this is the antidote to jealousy. So sometimes, even when we're practicing the Dharma, we can have an experience of jealousy, just like we can have an experience of any of the other mental poisons. Maybe somebody else looks like they do more prostrations, or maybe they sing the 7-branch prayer, which can be done, and it's very beautiful, but you feel like your voice is not very good and you wish it was like theirs, and so then we have some jealousy around that sort of thing. My voice is really bad. It's so bad that it's beyond jealousy. But anyway, this is the antidote to jealousy. So we say, rejoice in all positive actions included in the two truths done by yourself or others. Two truths we're going to come back to. For now, just note that we rejoice and confess those things that about other beings that we wish we had and we don't have. Accomplished by the Buddhas and ordinary beings, this is the antidote to jealousy. Rejoice in all positive actions included in the two truths done by self or others, whether tainted by emotional conflicts or perfectly pure. So note that we could confess something like jealousy and at the same time feel like the confession is positive. It doesn't need to be purified in order to be confessed, and the confession itself purifies. The fifth branch, we pray to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to turn the wheel of the Dharma. So I think most of you understand the wheel of the Dharma is the teaching of the Dharma. We're doing that here now, turning the wheel, all of us. So we rejoice in all positive acts and beneficial activity accomplished by the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and ordinary beings. This is very important. So often we include ordinary beings, but often we don't include ordinary beings. We're talking about great beings doing wonderful things. But like many great beings have said, if you don't rejoice as an ordinary being, if you do not rejoice in your own positive things, you will actually never get the benefit of those things. You'll never get good at it. So it's important to rejoice in the positive things done by Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and ordinary beings, and count ourselves amongst them. This is the antidote to jealousy. Rejoice in all positive actions included in the two truths, okay? So I just wanted to repeat that and repair a little bit of it. We pray, fifth, is we pray to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to turn the wheel of the Dharma. Exhorting Buddhas, this one is kind of funny, exhorting Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma. This is the antidote to confusion. Imagine you are in the presence of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So we're imagining that we're in the presence of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and we're exhorting them to continue engaging in their enlightened activity for the benefit of all sentient beings. I can't remember who the author of this line is, but I will find it. We are exhorting them to continue teaching, but the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas stop teaching. They stop. And we imagine that they have stopped and have grown tired of the ungrateful and discouraging attitude of sentient beings. That one always makes me laugh. You're not laughing? Think that they have grown tired of the ungrateful and discouraging attitude of sentient beings. I can't imagine why they would have that sense. Now we emanate millions of our own body. Imagine millions of our own body. It's kind of like an act of desperation, like they're quitting and we're kind of responsible for keeping them going. And so one body is not going to work. So we emanate millions, like uncountable bodies of ourselves. We imagine just vast to the extent that we can imagine our bodies engaging in prostrations and exhorting the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to continue teaching. Exhorting them to remain and turn the wheel of the Dharma. Okay, so that's the fifth one. We supplicate them to remain in this world for the benefit of all beings. This is the antidote for wrong views. We supplicate them to remain in this world for the benefit of all beings. This is the antidote for wrong views. So you might ponder that a bit. Why would that be a wrong view, an incorrect view? This is the antidote for wrong views. It is said that when you pray for the long life for your teachers and Vajra brothers and sisters, this is a profound practice which clears obstacles to one's own long life. So again here, the easy explanation for this is the truth of interdependence, that all things are interdependent, and the subtle things are no less interdependent. So if I make the wish that, the Dalai Lama often says this. He says, I'm sure that I'll live to an old age because there are millions of people who pray for my long life every day. And he says it, of course, with a certain sense of confidence and rejoicing, which he's so good at, with no sense of pride at all. Just like there's so many people pray for me, it's like there's no doubt about it. I'll live a long time. Of course, he's already lived a long time, so it's sort of a self-fulfilling thing. But anyway, this is a profound practice which clears obstacles to one's own long life. a lot of confidence in Buddhism for these kinds of things, which we might have a kind of cynical attitude about. Like, the subtlety often escapes us. We do not give great credibility to subtle things. We give great credibility to gross things, big things, you know. So this is not the case in the Bodhisattva prayers. We give great credibility to the very subtle things as well as the big things. The big things are all the result of millions of small things. Like, that's just the nature of this sort of work, is that somebody will make the wish, oh, I hope you have a nice day. And we think to ourselves, oh, no big deal, that's nothing. But what if you personally carry that around in your mind all day long, and you say it 1,000 times to yourself, I hope they have a really nice day, I hope they have a really nice day. You see somebody on the street and you just think, I hope they're having a nice day, it's such a nice day. Over and over, you might think that has no effect. But actually, you already know on yourself, it has a huge effect. It has such an effect that the next person you see, you will not be able to not smile at them. And so the effect just grows from these subtle things. And we feel happy about it at the same time. Since we feel happy about it, we're more likely to do something nice for somebody the next time when we see somebody. These are simple things, but they grow into really big things. Number 7. We dedicate the merit accumulated under the first 6 branches to the following intention, which runs like this. By the merit of these 6 branches, may the precious bodhicitta be born within my mind, and may I take the bodhisattva vow. This is the antidote for uncertainty. Another nice thing to contemplate. What is that uncertainty? The antidote for which is this branch. By the merit of these 6 branches, may the precious bodhicitta be born within my mind, and may I take the bodhisattva vow. This is the antidote for uncertainty. If you don't dedicate, this is a very interesting one, if you don't dedicate positive actions, you can't know their outcome. Ever heard that before? This is a very powerful one to contemplate. If you don't dedicate, like, for example, I see someone on the street, they look like maybe they're a little sad. They are a little sad. And I approach them and have a little conversation with them and get them to laugh, and they feel good, and we part. Simple. That happens to everybody. So now, I have no control whatsoever over the effect of that interchange. We would all say that. Like, that's done. If there's merit there, good. That's not the end of it. What we say is that if you dedicate the merit of that encounter, it has no end. It continues to manifest over and over again. The dedication itself is like you have a ball and you set it down and you roll it. You'd like to roll it across the street. And so you kind of push it out into the street and it rolls a little ways and stops. So our merit that we generate is kind of like that. It goes a little ways, then it stops. And indeed, we're encouraged, like, keep doing it. Keep doing that. You know? But the dedication, we say, manifests as a continuous revisiting of that thing that you're dedicating. I think if you ponder that long enough, you will see the connection. It's not so subtle. So this is the antidote for uncertainty. If you don't dedicate positive actions, you can't know their outcome. What we say is, it only manifests once, which is fine. That's good. But if you could do something so little as to dedicate it, then it manifests over and over again. Now, at the very least, this makes sense, at the very least, from the perspective of, if I think about it again, which is the dedication, I'm basically doing the same thing again, over again. And so it occurs again. When it occurs again, since I dedicated it and made the wish that somebody would benefit from it, I now naturally have the sense of, I want to do that again. So I'm planting the causes and conditions by which I am once again making this sense of this being. A source of merit not dedicated will bear fruit only once. If dedicated to ultimate enlightenment, it will never be exhausted. Yeah, we forgot that one, huh? Dedicated to ultimate enlightenment, not just a dedication, but dedicated to all the enlightenment, it will never be exhausted. Dedication gives the act direction. I dedicate our exchange that you might find tomorrow to be a joyful day. That's one act of dedication. I dedicate the exchange of today that you might become committed to the Bodhisattva prayer, the Bodhisattva vow, and through that and the actions associated with it, accomplish complete enlightenment. So that's what's really meant to be there when we dedicate an act that is virtuous like that. As it is said that loving kindness gives rise to compassion, and this then leads to the development of bodhicitta, therefore we will first rest in the mind of loving kindness. So resting in the mind of loving kindness as a kind of precursor, a beginning before we engage in other prayers, resting in the unbounded mind of awakening, and also in the mind of loving kindness is said to be a very positive start to any prayer, to any ritual, even just to do that, stop in the moment while you're walking down the street and give rise to loving kindness and make a wish for something over and over. Okay? Okay, it's almost our lunchtime. Let's take a few minutes and rest our minds. Now as we come to the place of dedicating, sometimes we are just a little bit lazy in the dedication, and we will perhaps verbally and mentally too just recite the dedication without any sense of what we're actually dedicating. It's especially helpful at the end of a meditation session, whether it's long or short. When we dedicate, think about what we just did this morning, exploring the various aspects of the Bodhisattva vow with our intention to learn the vow, to master the vow, our bodhicitta wish to accomplish complete enlightenment on behalf of all beings. Like, let your mind just for a moment mull over the pieces that we are dedicating. Oh, by this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state. So thank you all for this morning, and it has to be that we have some announcements, isn't it? Are you kidding me?
Well, when's the next session?
What?
When's the next session?
Wednesday night session. 1:30. Oh. I thought you were talking about the Wednesday night session, 1:30 a.m.
Today. Come back at 1:30 p.m., not a.m.
Get back by 1:20, 1:25 and get settled, and then we can start at 1:30.
And if you're not familiar with restaurants around here, there's a list of them right there.
There's no potluck.
Are there any pots? Is there any pot?
Brown bag. Do you have a brown bag? You have to eat a brown bag.
Oh.